The US government has spent decades lying to you. These aren't slip-ups or mistakes. They're calculated, deliberate attacks, repeated so often they become part of the national story. It's been built to control, divide, and profit. And I'm going to expose these truths right now, right here, with 10 lies that the US government says about Mexicans you should no longer believe. Number one, Mexicans are stealing American jobs. Forever now, US leaders have warned that Mexicans are stealing jobs from hardworking Americans, from campaign rallies to White House speeches. This line gets repeated over and over to spark fear and to get votes. The truth is opposite. Studies show that Mexican workers fill roles many Americans refuse, like farm work, meat packing, construction, and low-wage service jobs. These industries depend on them to survive. The Pew Research Center found that Latinos made up over 50% of the US agriculture workforce. Yet unemployment among the US citizens stayed tied to the economy, not immigration. It didn't tie to immigration, so it doesn't really matter. Jobs aren't stolen like they want you to believe. To be honest, Mexican laborers keep food on the table and homes standing. Politicians know this. They weaponize this myth because it's easy to sell anger. Mexicans aren't stealing jobs. They're doing the work that keeps the US going. But somehow politicians keep cashing in on this lie. Number two, Mexicans are lazy. US leaders have called Mexicans lazy for over a century, well over a century. This lie shows up in speeches, reports, and even old government posters that painted Mexican workers as slow and weak. The reality proves opposite though. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show that Mexican immigrants have one of the highest labor participation rates in the nation. Surprising to some of you, eh? That means more of them work compared to almost every other group. They take long shifts in fields, factories, kitchens, and construction sites, and many other jobs, often with no breaks, no safety, and low pay. The lazy label was invented just to justify exploitation and make money. If you call someone lazy, you can underpay them, strip them from their rights, and still claim it's their fault. Lazy Mexicans build homes, farms, and roads that the US stands on till today. If that's lazy, I don't really know what hard work looks like then. Number three, Mexicans are criminals. From Nixon's war on drugs to Trump's bad hombres, US leaders kept branding Mexicans as criminals. The message is super simple. Mexicans equal danger. Facts destroy the story actually. Study after study shows Mexican immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than US born citizens. The Cato Institute reviewed state-level data and found arrest and conviction rates for immigrants were way lower across the board. Local police chiefs from border states confirmed that it's the same thing there. Immigrants aren't driving the crime waves, yet fear sells. If you paint Mexicans as violent, it lets politicians pass the harsher laws. They get to expand prisons and funnel billions into border militarization. Crime myths aren't about safety. They're about control. Mexicans aren't filling American jails. They're filling its paychecks. The real crime is how long governments and private corporations have cashed in on this lie. Number four, Mexicans are drug smugglers. Every election cycle, US politicians say the same old story. Mexicans are flooding the country with their drugs. The DEA and border agents repeat it to keep budgets fat and alive. Here's the truth though. The US Sentencing Commission reports most fentanyl seized at the border isn't carried by Mexicans at all. It's brought in by US citizens. In fact, 86% of convicted fentanyl traffickers over the border are American, not from any other country. Drugs often enter through legal ports, hidden in cars or trucks by US citizens. Yet speeches focused on Mexican cartels as if every Mexican worker at the border is some sort of mule. The myth works because it hides the demand problem that's back home in the USA. Blame the border, not the buyer. It's simple. Mexicans aren't smuggling American drugs. Americans are. The lie protects dealers in suits, not workers in fields. Number five, Mexicans bring disease. For more than a century now, US agencies have smeared Mexicans as a health threat. In the early 1900s, border stations forced Mexican workers through chemical baths, claiming they carried lice and disease. Politicians kept recycling that fear during every health scare. But the science says opposite. Studies by the CDC show immigrants, including Mexicans, are often healthier than US born citizens. They have lower rates of chronic illnesses, longer life expectancies, and better newborn health. It's actually known as the immigration health advantage. The government never highlights this because fear is easier to sell. By painting Mexicans as walking plagues, they justify border crackdowns and harsh medical screenings, which also sounds like another way to make money. The health myth isn't about safety, it's about control and stigma. Mexicans don't bring disease. They bring proof that the US is sicker in its lies than in its own body. Number 6, Mexicans don't assimilate. Politicians love to claim that Mexicans don't blend in. They point to Spanish speaking in cities and say they don't want to be American. The government has pushed this myth for decades. And what it does, it just fuels division. Reality says otherwise though. The Pew Research Institution found that second generations, nearly all Mexican American kids speak fluent English after the second generation. By third generation, Spanish often fades completely. Mexican immigrants not only learn English, they buy homes, they start business, join the military, and vote. That's full assimilation, if you ask me, by every measure. The government ignores this truth because the myth of permanent outsiders keeps fear alive. It makes Mexicans look like a threat to the culture instead of what they really are, part of the culture. Mexicans don't resist America. They help shape it. The only ones refusing to assimilate are the politicians stuck in these lies and the people that believe them. Number 7 is that Mexicans flood welfare. Since the 1900s, US leaders have claimed that Mexicans come to drain welfare programs. The image is that most immigrants crossing the border jump right into benefits, into free benefits. The facts actually destroy this lie. A major study in National Academic found that immigrants use public benefits at lower rates than US-born citizens. Many Mexican immigrants don't even qualify for the aid, thanks to strict rules that block them from programs like food stamps or Medicaid. Those who do qualify often use less of it, despite paying taxes that fund these systems. The welfare drain myth wasn't about numbers. It was a weapon in political campaigns to frame Mexicans as a burden. The reality is opposite. They actually put more in than they take. Mexicans aren't draining welfare. They're helping pay for it. And at the same time, they're being locked out from using it. It's crazy. Number 8, Mexicans are uneducated. For decades, the US leaders have painted Mexicans as uneducated and unskilled, on top of many other things. The story that they cross with no degrees, no ambition, and no future. That's what they paint. But that picture is false. Data from Migration Policy Institute shows millions of Mexican immigrants hold high school diplomas, college degrees, and advanced skills. And their children climb even higher, graduating college at growing rates and stepping into fields like science, medicine, and business. In fact, Mexican Americans make up a rising share of US professionals, teachers, entrepreneurs, and other things. The uneducated myth was never about facts. It was about power. If the government brands Mexicans as unskilled, it just justifies lower wages, blocks visas, and it limits opportunities, basically. The lie keeps the labor cheap and the people invisible. Mexicans aren't uneducated. They're students, teachers, and builders they're helping write America's future. And the only ignorance here sits in the speeches made in Washington. Number 9, Mexicans are taking over. Mexicans aren't taking over America. The numbers prove it. Their share of immigration population has been shrinking while other groups continue to grow. The so-called takeover exists only in campaign speeches, not in real life. Politicians know the truth, but the truth doesn't get votes. Fear does. Mexicans aren't flooding the US. The data shows that their numbers are steadily falling. They're dropping. Yet Washington keeps shouting, invasion, to just spark panic. That's all they do it for. This invasion isn't happening in neighborhoods or workplaces. It's happening on TV screens, debate stages, and political ads designed to stir anger. The reality is clear. Mexicans aren't the threat. Fear is. And Washington sells that fear by the pound. It keeps money flowing in for the border wall, prisons, and security contracts. The Mexican takeover is nothing more than a sales pitch for power. Number 10, Mexicans are temporary workers. From the Barquero program in the 1940s to today's debates, US leaders keep pushing the idea that Mexicans are only here for like a season, like really quick work. They work the fields, clean the hotels, and then they disappear. History proves otherwise though. Millions of Mexicans didn't just labor and leave. They stayed, built families, bought homes, and started businesses. Today, Mexican Americans make up the largest Latino group in the US, with deep roots in every state. They serve in the military, they run companies, and hold political office. The temporary label was never about truth. It was a tool. If the government calls Mexicans guests, they can deny them rights easily. They can deny them benefits and permanence in the country also. Yet reality shows that they're permanent everywhere. Mexicans aren't temporary workers. They're permanent builders of America. The only temporary thing should be these government lies. Step back and all these lies line up. Mexicans weren't branded as lazy, criminal, diseased, and dangerous. It wasn't because it was true. It's because it's useful. These myths fuel walls, prisons, and profit. None of it protects the USA. It protects power. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly how it was designed. If you're ready to see how deep this targeting runs, watch this right here. Click on it, watch it next. And that's where the story gets really dark, and why this targeting of Mexicans hasn't ended and won't end anytime soon. Click it and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.